I'm Nick Schillingford, coming to you from the Urban Cabin Studios in South Minneapolis with this interview.
Um, Things are moving quite
I,
fast here.
I know,
So
right?
hard to keep track.
Yeah. So on Socialist News and Views, we let folks introduce themselves. Do you want to just tell our audience who you are?
Yeah, hi, my name is Pranay Rana. I'm a journalist and a writer based in Kathmandu, Nepal. I write a weekly newsletter called Column Weekly. It's over on Substack. And I've been closely following the protests and developments that have been happening over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. So as you were mentioning, anybody who's been paying attention in the United States, things have been moving fast. But if you're paying attention, people have been trying to in the U.S. discern what is going on, what is happening in Nepal, and as you mentioned, things have moved quickly. You mentioned in
Mm.
your Substack that over those 2 days, essentially, quote, the entire state apparatus has been swept away, end quote. Um, can you talk about like what led up to this in the recent period, and then what you actually saw or experienced over those 2 days?
Yeah, okay. So everything really started with an online social media trend, mainly on TikTok and on Instagram. It was called Nepo babies or Nepo kids, basically Nepo short for nepotism,
Right.
uh, calling out all of the children of our established politicians, you know. So these children, so for context, all of our parties in Nepal, all the political parties, almost all of them are left or center left. Most of our like the two biggest parties in Nepal are the Nepali Congress, which is Democratic Socialist, the Communist Party of Nepal, United Marxist Leninist, who are communist, and then the third largest party is the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist. So these are the three largest parties. All of them profess to be either communist or socialist, and yet their children live lives of fabulous luxury, um, which people have been seeing over the years. But this has become all the more evident since social media took off. Because now what young people see is that people of their age, the children of these politicians, are also either Gen Z or millennials, young people who have somehow come into vast amounts of wealth, that they're able to take luxury vacations abroad to Europe every few months. They carry, Louis Vuitton handbags and wear Prada shoes and have Rolexes that are worth more money than most Nepalis will ever see in their lives. So this has been building for a while, that Nepali people, especially young Nepalis, have been seeing these kids showing off their wealth. And so this social media trend, the Nepo kids trend, was to call these kids out, saying, "Where'd you get your money from? Your parents have been politicians all their lives. You guys yourselves don't have any real jobs. So where is all that money coming from? It's probably our money, that was
Right.
supposed to belong to the people of Nepal, that your parents got through corruption. That's our money." So they started calling them out, and this was trending. It was going viral for over a week. And then, right at that moment, the government decided to enact a social media ban, basically shutting down 26 social media websites, including very popular ones like Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, LinkedIn, and a bunch of others. The only ones that were still active were TikTok and the messaging app Viber. So
Just one quick aside. I think I don't know if you mentioned in another interview or I read the Nepo babies hashtag. Some of that started in Indonesia too, didn't it? Or because there was all that stuff going on in Indonesia right before.
exactly, yes,
Okay. I just
yes.
want, yeah. Because I was looking at Indonesia and then I was like, holy, I'm like turning over here. Things are like, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, yeah, the trend was borrowed from Indonesia and the Philippines, who were having their own student movements, youth-led movements. So Nepalis saw that happening and they're like, yeah, this applies very much to us. So they took it up and they were sharing all of these. Then the social media ban happened. The ban wasn't technically to suppress the criticism. It was part of this years long process that the government has been trying to get social media websites to register in Nepal. So they want, Meta or Alphabet to establish a company here in Nepal, a local representation here in Nepal, so that they can reach out to them in case they need some content taken down, or they need to police social media.
Right.
These companies have been refusing to do so because we don't really have a law, an act that says social media companies need to be registered. So Meta has argued that, well, unless there's a law, we can't really register. So they've been refusing to do it. So the government said, okay, if you're going to refuse, we're just going to ban you. So the government banned these social media sites, which coincided with the social media, the Nepo baby trend. So what young people saw is that, well, the government is trying to suppress our free speech. That we were criticizing their kids. They were not happy about that.
Right.
And they did this in a way just to stop all of the criticism from happening.
Right.
So they said, okay, if you're not going to let us talk online, we're going to come take to the streets and protest. So on September 8th, that was the first protest that they had planned. And it was supposed to be a largely non-violent, completely youth-led, no political party involvement, peaceful protest. And for the most part, it was. It was very, it was like a festival. There were young kids singing, dancing, playing music. There were kids in school uniforms, who had uh, taken time off from their school, from college, to take part in. And the first half of the protest, very peaceful, very well done. Everything was fun until a few protesters tried to enter the parliament building. And that's when the security forces, the police, who was there to provide security, started employing lethal force against the protesters. So first it started with tear gas and water cannons. When that didn't work, they quickly switched to rubber bullets and then eventually live ammunition. And Yeah, so 19 people, young Nepalis, died that day. And these were mostly kids, they're like in their early 20s. There was even like a young kid in school uniform carrying a school backpack who was shot in the head by the security forces. And then things
It's
went
terrible.
completely out of control.
Right.
And there was mass criticism on social media. Everyone was angry because these are kids.
Right.
And even people of older generations, millennials and older, they saw that this is completely unacceptable, that you
Right.
cannot shoot young kids who are protesting peacefully. And the
Kind of
initial
similar, kind of
evidence,
similar to how we saw in Bangladesh. Similar thing. It
yes,
was a bunch of kids shot, and then all of us, and then of course everyone in society is, mad because
mhm,
kids are important for the future.
right,
Yeah.
right, right, exactly. And also in our, like, in Nepal, um, these kind of public movements are usually led by the political parties.
Right.
Uh, this time, it was no political parties involved. It was purely supposed to be a young people-led Gen Z movement. Um, so there was huge anger. Everyone was calling for the prime minister, whose name is KP Sharma Oli. He was the prime minister, and they were calling on him to resign. He needed to take responsibility for those deaths, but he refused to resign. The home minister, uh, who was also responsible for the firings, he resigned, but the prime minister refused. And then the next day, September 9th, there was a curfew order in place, but people took to the streets anyway.
Nice.
And this time it was not just the young people, not just Gen Z, but it was everyone. Everyone was angry. And initially, what started out peacefully with just some, angry sloganeering and yelling at the police, talking to people, that quickly morphed into a very violent protest where uh, buildings started to get looted and burned down, where police were systematically targeted and attacked. Um Police stations were burned down. Three police officers were murdered, lynched by the mob. And basically, every institution of the Nepali state, including parliament, uh, the seat of the executive, the Supreme Court, all of this, all of them were burned down by mobs of angry protesters. Every single politician, a political party leader, the top leadership, all of their homes are broken into and burned. One of our most senior politicians, the president of the Nepali Congress, who is who was in an alliance right now, just the previous government. He was in an electoral alliance with the government. He and his wife. His wife was the foreign minister. They were both attacked by the crowd, beaten, and then kicked out of their homes while their homes are burned. So this was um, an explosion of anger towards the state.
Right.
And it was just years, decades of frustration, anger, resentment, all of these things building up until one spark, the killing of the 19 young protesters just lit this spark that burned everything down. So we're right now at a situation where the previous government has completely collapsed. Everyone has resigned. Um, we have a new interim government in place, which is led by a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. She is not young. She is 73,
Mm,
but she was chosen by the young protesters, incidentally, through a Discord vote.
nice.
Uh, Yes, so she's now heading an interim government which has pledged to hold elections within 6 months. So we're going to have fresh elections to a new parliament in 6 months' time. So that's where we are right now.
Do you just quick? Do you want to just give a little more background on who she is specifically? This person who's been elected. Just brief.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So her name is Sushila Karki. She is a former Chief Justice, and she has had a reputation for being very anti-corruption. During her time on the Supreme Court, she jailed a minister for corruption charges, one of the highest profile corruption cases in Nepal's history. She has been very, very vocal about not just corruption, but also about handing power over to the next generation. She has given multiple interviews. She has spoken publicly, confronting the political leaders, the politicians, the old politicians who still run the country. She called them out to she's actually there was an interview that went recently, was going viral, where she was saying, how long are you going to hold on to this post until the day you die? You want to just hold on to power? When are you ever going to relinquish this?
Right.
So she has had a track record of calling out corruption and transfer of power, which are two things that are very important to this new generation of protesters, the Gen Z. So they saw her as an ideal fit, even though she might not be young, but she's an older generation who identifies with them. And another thing, what made her appeal to the young people was that she was one of the few uh, public figures of that generation who came out onto the streets on September 9th to protest and called everyone out, saying, you need to take responsibility. Calling out the prime minister, saying, you need to take responsibility for these deaths, that you have murdered these 19 kids in cold blood, and you need to be responsible. So, I'm sorry, let me just shut this down.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yes, so the young people, they saw that, well, she has a great history, but she's also willing to uh, take part. She's not just someone who stays at home and is fine with whatever is happening and writing on social media. She's someone who actually came out onto the streets to support them. So they're like, okay, this is a great person. We should probably try to get her to run the interim government. So that's what they did. They had a few names that they were putting up on Discord. There's this Discord channel filled with over 10,000 young Nepalis who are all talking and deciding, well, what should we do? Who should we move forward with? And among those five names, Sushila Karki was the 50% of
Nice.
voters chose her. So then, yeah, so she was eventually chosen as the interim prime minister.
Yeah, and I think I saw something that she said she didn't particularly want to do that, but she understood that she had been selected and she was willing to carry it out. And it's it's so funny whenever there's elections, especially if there's anybody, at least here, if there's anybody challenging or whatever, the person who's been in the position for a long time, they always talk about how they have all this experience and stuff. But
Yeah,
usually the experience is corruption and selling out and
exactly.
capitulating. And so it actually is valid. Maybe this kind of a situation, it might be good to have somebody who's had some experience with this whole thing, because you know she might be somewhat aware of what kinds of tricks they're going to try to pull
Yeah.
in this period, because there's going to be a lot
Mhm.
of tricks, I'm sure, and
Yeah, yeah.
distractions and all that stuff. So yeah, hopefully this is a and I think there's something to be said for somebody who doesn't necessarily want to be in leadership but feels the obligation that they are like representing people. So that's kind of how
Mhm.
leadership should be, if there's going to be leadership of some kind.
Yeah,
My my,
exactly. And
my feeling.
she said that, that she has no interest in becoming prime minister after 6 months.
Right.
She said, like, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. 6 months, we're going to hold elections. After that, I'm out.
Right.
He has shown absolutely no willingness to be in power or to hold on to power. Like you said, she took it up very reluctantly because she was chosen by the young protesters. She was like, okay, if you're going to give me this responsibility, then I'll take it up. But that's it. 6 months after that, I'm out.
Nice. Yeah, well, that's exciting that there's a person who's willing to be a person like that, because there's not always somebody who's like that, that can step into that role, and who people feel like they can trust. um
Exactly.
I wanted to, in the United States, specifically where I am, there's a lot of disinformation in the United States in general. You've probably seen all the whitewashing of this, guy that was a real racist and stuff that died. Anyway, there's all this, everything here is like upside down. Everything they
Charlie
say is
Kirk.
backwards. So yeah, exactly. Charlie Kirk. So, but anyway, so some activists here, have said or implied that this is some kind of a color revolution or a Western backed overthrow of the government. Um, is that is there any evidence of any of that? Is there anyone within any of the groups that you saw on the street that's seemed like they were very pro Western, i.e., U.S., Britain, Germany, or something that would be considered anything like that?
No, no.
Yeah,
So what I've seen and from what I know is that the evidence that these people are using to say that this was a color revolution,
right,
it's all very speculative. Uh, it's just like, they're drawing links where there are none.
right.
So what they've, so let's discuss some of the
It's not
evidence
something
that they
you've seen though, or that you've
yeah.
encountered, right? So yeah, let's hear it.
It's used, right? Like, so they say, a lot of the Gen Z protest signs were in English. And they're like,
Mm,
why would, Nepalis write signs in English? But the thing is, in Nepal, English is very, very common.
mm,
Almost everyone can speak English. And it's because, we have proximity to India, where English is one of the national languages. We have had, relations with the British for a very long time.
right,
And even though we were directly colonized, there has been a kind of cultural colonization that has been happening for a very, very long time. So most Nepalis speak English, especially the Gen Z, the younger population.
right,
Their mode of communication is mostly in English because they're online.
right.
They're texting all the time, they're writing all the time, they're communicating in English. So
Yep.
that is not something strange for Nepal. It happens all the time. It's always in English. And also, the conspiracy theorists have pointed out the involvement of this group called Hami Nepal,
Okay.
which is it's a non-governmental organization, humanitarian organization that has been active since 2015. And they've been doing humanitarian work. They help people affected by the earthquake, any natural disasters. They provide relief materials. So basically they've been doing that for quite some time. And conspiracy theorists have said that, oh, these people, they've received funding from Coca-Cola, or they've worked with this organization called Students for a Free Tibet, and they're saying, see, Students for a Free Tibet is an American thing.
Right.
uh, that's what America's position is. So they're using that to link this to American interests. But what they don't understand is that in Nepal there are a lot of Tibetans.
Hmm.
We've had Tibetan refugees here since the 60s. There is, at the ground level, our government is very pro-China, but on a societal level, we have had Nepal has relations with Tibet going back hundreds of years. We are very, very sympathetic to the Tibetan people. So it's not strange that there would be a humanitarian organization working with an organization like Students for a Free Tibet. That's no evidence of American influence at all. Um, so the question that I also would like to ask a lot of these conspiracy theories is that, well, how does the US benefit from this?
Mm.
Just, removing an entire like top leadership of all the political parties, that doesn't benefit the US, doesn't
Mm.
benefit India or China. It doesn't benefit any foreign powers because now they have no one to talk to or no one to influence.
Right.
Young people in power, they're not a centralized group of people. They're very, very decentralized. There's competing interests. There are many, many different groups. And of course, yes, foreign powers could use that to their advantage to sow chaos or prop up their own, factions that are sympathetic to them. They could do that.
Well,
But that's going to take
that's
a
what they
lot
do
more
anyway.
work.
They'll try to do that anyway. It doesn't matter what happened before. That's what they're always trying to do is get their
Yeah.
own interests to the top of the pile.
Yeah. So no matter who comes in, the foreign powers are going to do what they're going to do. And they already had people. The Nepali Congress was seen as very sympathetic to India and the US,
Mm.
whereas the communist parties were seen as sympathetic to China.
Mm.
But if you remove all of them, now we have no one who is sympathetic to anyone. So
Right.
now even the foreign powers have to start from scratch, trying to build alliances or find people who are sympathetic to them. That doesn't really help them in the immediate. Maybe down the line it will, but from I don't see what they would get by fomenting this type of chaos. It's not Ukraine. There is
Right.
no, it's not like they have someone that they can prop up and say, hey, this person can now lead the country. Sushila Karki, the interim prime minister, she's no friend to America. She has absolutely no relations with the US or even India or China. She's not a political figure. She's been a chief justice, but that's all. She hasn't really been an active participant in public politics until now.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's good to get an actual firsthand perspective on what's going on because like I said, there's so much misinformation that happens in the United States and um, just people have their own competing interests that they're trying to push. So yeah, so we talked about some of the recent events. I was just wondering if you'd be willing to go back a little bit more, give it just a little bit more background, just on the previous government that was in power and how they came to power. I know there's been series of other revolutionary periods in the history of Nepal, but I just wanted to hear a little bit about the background of this previous
Um,
government and before.
Yeah, so this previous government, it was led by KP Sharma Oli, who was the prime minister. He was from the UML party, the United Marxist Leninists. They are one of the biggest parties, and they were supported by the Nepali Congress, which is another of the big parties. So these two parties were in an alliance and in a coalition government. KP Sharma Oli is he's been seen as a very nationalist leader. He is very anti-India, and he has been very close to China. So the Indians have been very unhappy with Oli, whereas the Chinese have been quite pleased with him. The Nepali Congress, though, has traditionally been closer to India, and India, if India got its way, it would definitely like to see the Nepali Congress in power. And India, of course, is a big player in Nepal. They have outsized influence, especially among the political parties. They have had this influence for a very, very long time now. Um, so at one point, they were even called the kingmakers in Nepal because no one could be prime minister without the explicit approval of the Indian establishment. But in recent years, China has also been making inroads. So China at one point was simply it used to stay out of Nepal. It used to say that, oh, Nepal is in India's sphere of influence. So it would try not to interfere politically. But in recent years, China has also stepped up its activism within Nepal. It's been cultivating a lot of communist leaders, and it has been providing a lot more material support to Nepal, both above the board and under the table.
Right.
So that's been happening. So these two players, of course, India, China, naturally are going to be active in a country like Nepal, which is very sensitive for both these countries. Both of them have significant interests here. India, because we share an open border with India, and India sees Nepal as kind of, like it's buffer state.
Right. Right.
And for China too, China's major concern with Nepal for in Nepal is are the Tibetans here. There's
Mm.
thousands of Tibetans, and China is always concerned that there could be some kind of movement brewing in Nepal that the Tibetans are going to do.
Right.
So these are generally these two interests. But what has happened ever since? Okay, let me go back even
Oh yeah,
further.
yeah, yeah. Please do.
So I'm sure your listeners might know that Nepal had a 10-year civil war that was led by the Maoist party. So it was a Maoist people's revolution, right? People's war that
Mm.
happened for 10 years, started in 1996, it ended in 2006.
Okay.
So
Yep.
in 2006, the Maoists, we had a very peaceful end to the war. The Maoists came above ground. They signed an agreement with the mainstream political parties, and they gave up their weapons to enter, democratic multi-party
Sure.
politics. So after 2006, we were all promised, like, oh, this is going to be a new Nepal, like,
Right.
where things are going to be better. The Maoists are now in government, so they're going to push for all these changes that they've waged a 10-year war for. That's what we all thought. We even wrote a new constitution
Mm.
to reflect the changes from the People's War and all of the aspirations that the people had.
Right.
Uh, but unfortunately, there was no new Nepal.
Mm.
Everything that had happened for the past 20, 30 years repeated again. Since 2006 up until now, we've had over 20 governments. No prime minister has ever had more than 2 years in power. There is constant political instability. Each party is always trying to topple the government so that they can take their turn.
Right.
And the Maoists, who came to power as this revolutionary party who was going to fight for the people, they've been completely and totally co-opted by the system, that they are almost unrecognizable from the party that conducted the war.
Mm.
They are now just as bourgeois and just as corrupt as
Right.
all of the parties that they fought against. So it was in this context that this young generation, Gen Z, grew up in the shadow of all of these. They didn't get to take part in the earlier protests because they were too young,
Right.
but they saw that, okay, we were promised that there's going to be new Nepal. We're going to do things differently. Things are going to be better for all of us. But what they were faced with is um, extreme political instability and no jobs,
Right.
extreme unemployment, uh, and almost a hopeless kind of future. Young
Mm.
Nepalis today do not see a future in Nepal. They don't want to stay here because they think that there is no point in living in Nepal. I need to emigrate. I need to move to another country the first chance I get. So right after high school or after completing their bachelor's degree, the young kids immediately will try to move abroad wherever they can.
Where are some of the biggest primary places they're going? Do you know? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
so they're going to Australia, they're
Okay,
going to the US, they're
Australia and the
going to
U.S.,
Canada.
Canada. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so Western countries mostly, that's where they see as, I can get a better job there, I can get a better education there. And eventually the plan is to, of course, to settle down there because they don't see there's no point in coming back to Nepal.
Mm,
So that's mostly, the educated kind of middle class, upper middle class people. For the lower class, the people who are poorer, who are from the villages and all, their only hope is to go to countries in the Middle East, like
mm,
Saudi Arabia or Qatar, or even countries like Malaysia or South Korea, where they go there to do manual labor jobs.
mhm.
Basically, so Qatar, which held the World Cup a few years ago, there were thousands of Nepalis who were working building those stadiums, and they were also dying just in
Right.
the desert. So that's what they do because all of the money that they make in Qatar is more money than they will ever make in Nepal. So that's what they do. They go abroad, they work, and they send that money back to their families here. Right now, they're sending money that is equivalent to about 25% of our GDP.
Okay.
So Nepal's economy is basically kept afloat completely by remittance, money that is sent home
Right.
from abroad. If that stopped, we would collapse as a state. Yeah, so that's the succinct
No,
history
I think
of
that's
politics.
very succinct and hits all the main points. I really appreciate you speaking with me. Is there anything else you want to share before you go? Is there anything else that you think people in the U.S. should know specifically about Nepal that would help them understand what's going on now? Anything else you want to share, or anything else you want to mention?
Um, I think, well, there is also I don't know how interesting this would be to your
No, let's hear
listeners.
it. Let's hear it anyway. I
Uh,
want it. Let's do it.
so Nepal used to be a monarchy, for
Right.
over 200 years. We got rid of the monarchy in 2006, right after the Maoist war was over. We decided because that's when the king had kind of taken control and become a dictator,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a popular movement against him. We removed him. But now, what is happening is that there is a small movement that is building to bring the monarchy back.
Oh, right.
So there is renewed interest in re-establishing the Nepal as a kingdom,
Yeah,
especially
I
as a
think
head.
I think I listened to an interview you did on this, like maybe 5 months or something back.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting. Keep going. If you
So
just a little bit
that
more.
the monarchy, the movement for the monarchy is also rooted in the same frustration that the Gen Z protest was born from.
Mm,
Uh, there, the monarchists see the king as this like unifying figure who
right.
can come in and take charge and get rid of all these corrupt political parties.
Right.
So for them, they look at the monarchy through, kind of rose-colored glasses. They see
Right.
like, oh, it was a great period. It really wasn't. The
No.
monarchy was also just as corrupt
Right.
as the political parties. They were no better. But it is a symptom, uh, there is widespread frustration among the Nepali people, and people are looking at different options. So first it was the monarchists looking at the king and saying maybe if the king came back. But now with the Gen Z protests, what has happened is that Gen Z has rejected everyone. They're like, no, we cannot have any of these old systems that we had in place. We need to burn everything to the ground and start anew. That's the only way that we can even hope to
Right.
to move forward in a progressive way that benefits everyone and not just the people who have always been in power. So I think that's an interesting angle that I think we should also look at, and also I'm hoping that the monarchists don't take advantage of the chaos and the confusion that is in right now to
Right.
build a bigger movement and bring the king back. I hope that it doesn't go that way, but we have to be vigilant and prevent that because me personally, I would rather not go back to
Right.
being subjects under a monarch.
I agree. I agree with you. I support that. If you need anything from me, just let me know. I'm here. I don't
Sure.
want that either for you. Um, I really appreciate the chance to speak with you. It's so important. We need people talking to each other and sharing lessons and all this other stuff, sharing at least what's going on at the very basic so that we can kind of learn something from that. But even yet, if
Mm.
there's more stuff to pass along about what's working, what's not working, where to focus some energy to get the most results, that's going to be stuff we just need to keep sharing.
Yeah.
I think the young people in Nepal have done a lot of good work, and
Mm.
I have no reason to think they won't continue to do a lot of good work. So we'll keep our eyes open and keep paying attention and sharing information.
Yes, please do. And I mean, thank you for, inviting me onto your podcast. It's I mean, usually I try not to talk because I'm a journalist.
Right.
I like to let my writing speak for itself.
No, I
But
get it.
what has happened these past 2 weeks is that there has been so much misinformation and so many people trying to twist what is happening to their own agendas that I feel like I need to kind of try to at least provide a local perspective so that people get an understanding that is a ground level and understanding. I'm
Right.
here in Kathmandu. I've been part of the protest. I've seen everything,
Right.
and I would rather that your listeners listen to me than someone on Twitter or X,
Right.
saying, "Oh, this is all Western-led
Who
coup."
who could
The
be a
CIA.
bot? They might not even be real. They could be AI. They could be a bot. They
Could
could,
be
there's
bots,
so much
right?
stuff
Yeah,
out there. Yeah. It's
exactly.
nice to talk to real people.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So thank you for that. I hope your listeners will enjoy this. And if you,
They will.
you'd like me to ask any follow-up questions, or if you have any just like burning questions that you'd want to get answered, please let me know.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
try to provide whatever answers I can.
Well, yeah, and we'll connect again, I'm sure, sometime. So that would be great. And that's the interview. Thanks for listening. Solidarity.